going to change the lives of so many students and put thousands of dollars back into our pockets so we can focus on school and getting a good paying job once we graduate.
All right, Daniel, what's in your leaders' platform that speaks to your generation specifically?
Well, as a university student, Doug Ford's pledged to do everything in his power as premier to ensure that freedom of speech is an important issue on campuses and to protect the freedom of speech for people on campus, especially when that's something that, especially as a conservative, is not currently guaranteed to me.
Okay. And what about financially? Is there anything financially that speaks to your group specifically, or do you think that Doug Ford has ignored the concerns of millennials in favor of older Ontarians?
No, I don't think so, because yes, youth issues are important, but it's also important to realize that you're not going to be a youth forever, and that you also have to plan for the future and you have to vote for the future. I think Doug Ford's proposals to create more jobs and to lower taxes, and especially for people planning families, is going to be very important for people in the years to come. And
you're nodding, Abel.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to freedom of speech, quickly, I think we have freedom of speech here. Freedom to express yourself is something in the Constitution we all value. We should be telling the distinction between freedom of speech and freedom from criticism, right? I think we're adequate and we're good when it comes to freedom of speech, but when it comes to the Conservatives' plan for young people, telling young people that we're not going to be young forever, I don't think is a good way of speaking to youth. And it's sort of as if we're kind of talking down to youth. And I've read a little bit of what Doug Ford's had to say, and he's been questioned before on how he's going to support young people in this election and talk about dealing with rising tuition. And he doesn't have anything. He doesn't have an accountable plan. He's got no policies that are going to help us with our tuition. And I believe that under a Doug Ford Ontario, tuition rates are going to continue to rise, and that's not acceptable.
Daniel, do you want to respond to that?
Well, it's important to get a job after you finish school, and a Doug Ford premiership would create better job opportunities for people of all ages, including students. And the lower taxes will obviously make it easier to pay for your tuition and to pay off your debt. And better jobs will give you better income. You need to have somewhere to go when you're finished university.
Joshua, jump in here.
Yeah, so I think that the Liberal platform is kind of hitting both sides of that issue on youth, which I think is excellent. We are, as you mentioned, the largest base right now, and our vote will be very impactful and leave a lasting effect on this election. But at the same time, it is important to address of course, issues with other demographics as well and age groups. So stuff specifically in our platform, like extending farm care up to those who are 65 and up. We're kind of addressing both sides of that issue, I think. And that's something I think is really strong within our platform.
Is there a motivation among the millennial generation, or the people, as far as you've been able to see, to go out and vote in this election? Daniel.
Absolutely. I know within the U of T Tories, we have been incredibly active over the last few weeks, especially in the last few months, leading up through the leadership race and into the provincial race. And I know many other universities have their political organizations out in full force, be it Conservative, Liberal, or NDP. It's a very politically active climate right now for youth.
Abel, do you agree with that?
Yeah, honestly, it's a beautiful thing to see, young people getting involved in politics. I've seen just over the last couple of weeks and the last couple of days, so many friends of mine come to me and ask what I feel about the election and how they should vote, how they can register to vote, how they can get involved, young people volunteering, getting active that way with knocking on doors. So many young people showing up to advance polls too, which is really, really great to see. Young people actually wanting to jump ahead of the gun there and vote early and exercise their democratic right as early as possible. people. And I think there really is a lot of movement to vote in this election because it is such a stark contrast and such a stark choice between Andrew Horwath's NDP and Doug Ford's Conservatives.
Joshua, do you feel a little left out? And do you think that young Liberals are keen to vote? Or has what's happened put a bit of a damper on it?
No, I think I don't feel left out. I think that young Liberals and young people who are Liberals are still very strong and have been showing up to vote. And I think those the high rates of youth voter turnout is really inspiring, and specifically that youth Liberal vote, I completely agree. Within looking at the advanced polls and my friends specifically reaching out to me to exercise those democratic rights. I think we definitely have those numbers as well, but I think it is really just incredible looking at this across all parties. Youth, the increased rates of youth voter turnout, I think is excellent.
Okay, Daniel, I have one question for you, and that is, do you think that the latest news about Doug Ford will influence his chances in this election? The fact that his brother's widow, Renata Ford, is, let me just get it exactly here, is launching a lawsuit asking for millions of dollars in damages to be paid to her and her children, accusing Doug Ford essentially of mismanaging the family company. Do you think that'll have an impact?
Well, I think all news has an impact on politics all the time, but I believe that Ontario voters are smart enough to wait until we know all of the facts and we can really take a look at this case outside just what we've just found out now.
All right. Daniel Cook, Director of Outreach for the University of Toronto Campus Conservatives. Abel Megastab, President of Carleton University New Democrats. Joshua Monk, the President of the Western University Liberals. Thank you all for joining me tonight.
Thanks so much. Pleasure to be here.
Good night.
Thanks.